everybody. Welcome into Dog Nation's Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company. I'm Brandon Adams. This is John Stinchcomb, the former Georgia All-American. It is Halloween. It's not Halloween. I don't know how I got that confused. It's been a long day. It's Thanksgiving. Thankfully, John and I aren't doing this live right now. We're both with family and friends and enjoying the Thanksgiving holiday, and hope as all of you tune in for this, you're doing very much the same thing. Maybe you get your phone in your lap while you're, sitting there on your second plate of food, dessert, whatever else. But we just really appreciate you being a part of our Dog Nation Happy Hour here today, poured by Classic City Lager. So, John, hello to you. Thanks for being a part of this too. And I know that you're like me, Thanksgiving's such a fun time of year that it's the kind of thing that you really look forward to. And this year's obviously different. You got to, be careful and things like that. And obviously we encourage people to do all of that kind of stuff. But it's still a time that people want to try to enjoy themselves, have some good food, and certainly celebrate all that, even in the midst of a very weird year like this. We just have so much to be thankful for.
Don't we? 2020 Thanksgiving is the closest we'll have to a Halloween for Thanksgiving, because we're probably still thinking about masks and wearing them, and it's just so bizarre. But it makes you think of all the things that we've taken for granted this year that you're so grateful that we have, including college football. But health is paramount these days, and so grateful for that, and pray for those that are dealing with some health issues this season. And there really is just so much to be thankful for.
Yeah, that's indeed the case. And obviously we're looking forward to Georgia football on Saturday against South Carolina. I think there's a huge level of curiosity about this game. If you're 30,000 feet in the air looking down on it, 21.5-point favorite. Georgia not really playing for the SEC. South Carolina with an interim coach. South Carolina's not playing for much at all, period. And yet this game is fascinating for so many ways. I think in particular is this. John, we saw a game from JT Daniels, the quarterback, last week that was better than I could have imagined it being. And now Georgia fans who had so much fun watching that, the curiosity builds for, what's the encore going to be like? What's week 2 going to be like after week 1 was as fun as it was? So, John, you and I talked about this a little bit on Monday on Dog Nation Daily, but, beyond kind of what's already been said, what do you expect from JT on Saturday after he gave us a glimpse of just how good the immediate present and the near future could be for him?
I hope it's second verse, same as the first, because he could not have played any better. 400-plus yards and 4 passing touchdowns. The guy was on fire. I look forward to seeing the rest of the team kind of stepping into a more familiar role, especially from the defense, and getting the running game back. So there's compliments to his game that hopefully unload some of the pressure that most folks wouldn't be able to step in game 1 mid-season and crush it the way JT did. He could not have played better for a first performance. And I think it's just a matter of time and opportunity for the rest of the team to kind of rally around that and build as you go into this back half of this 2020 season and put a mark on it. It's not what you had hoped for at the beginning of the season, but you still, how do you want to finish? What pride do you have in your team, and understanding that these are different circumstances, as we are so very aware, but what kind of mark can you leave for 2020?
I want to talk to you more about some of the issues that Georgia needs to clean up around JT Daniels, really on both sides of the ball. We'll do that before we're done. But, John, I do think it's interesting that, compare this to a few weeks ago. Georgia goes to Lexington, takes on Kentucky. Georgia that day was a 17-point favorite. Just use that as a perceived expectation for the game. Georgia won by 11. Defense only allowed 3 points. Compare that to Georgia playing at home as a 26-point favorite. Georgia wins by 7 in that game and really had to fight scratch and claw to get that done. Yet the general feeling I've gotten from most fans is they were happy about the game versus Mississippi State than they were the more substantial win against a better Kentucky team that came on the road. To me, that's an indication that, and it's just, this is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing, that fans enjoy seeing high-powered passing attacks. They enjoy being able to rally around a good quarterback. That's just human nature, I guess, for football fans, if you will. The reaction you get to the 2 recent Georgia wins, I think, is all the proof that you need of that.
Well, it shows that we're in the entertainment industry. Football is for our entertainment, and what do we like to see? We like to see great performances. And for Georgia fans specifically, the point of angst has been the quarterback position for so long. I mean, since Jake Fromm left the Keys. Before that, you're even the Justin Fields situation. You're going, good luck at Ohio State as you seem to crush it. And we missed that opportunity. This has been a point of angst for us as fans for so long, that burr in the saddle and spear in the side situation. And finally to have a guy that you feel like played with confidence and has a high ceiling and great ability and performed really well, it finally checks a box that has been filled with a question mark for so long, that I think that's more of the point of joy that fans have felt, not so much about the team performance, but specifically the quarterback position, where you feel like, man, we finally got something here.
Here's the other thing I'll say is, and I don't know if you had a chance to see JT Daniels' post-game press conference or not. It's on the Dog Nation YouTube page. Folks should go and watch it for themselves. John, I couldn't have scripted it any better for Daniels. You know, when I think about the kind of personality I want my quarterback to have, there is obviously a little bit of humility I want any, body to have, because I do think that helps, you maintain the focus that you need to have success. You can't get too far out in front of yourself on that. But I don't mind a quarterback having a little bit of an assuredness. And I thought that Daniels in the post-game press conference was almost the perfect complement of kind of like chocolate and peanut butter goes well together with a Reese's or something like that. Daniels had the humility of, hey, I'm just glad to have these great receivers, but also the confidence of, I really believe I can get the ball to them. I loved almost everything he had to say post-game for a guy who's really been enigmatic to the point where some people even kind of jokingly wondered, does he even exist? It's gone, he had gone so long without making a Georgia appearance. We found out on Saturday, both during the game and then after the game, with some of the things that he said, not only does he exist, he really has the kind of personality that I think makes him very interesting, and also, said the kinds of things that I do think displays an attitude which could also contribute to his success.
Yeah, I think he did a great job of showing leadership in his answers. One, he gave credit to his supporting staff, and obviously Burton had a career game, and you want to highlight those guys for, it's complimentary football. You made me look good. I came out there and you made some plays on some balls that were 50-50 at best. And at the end of the day, my stat sheet looks better because of your performance. I think he did a great job of recognizing those kind of performances of guys stepping up and helping one another perform well. It's a team game. I need you to win those balls, just like you need me to put you in a position to make a play on the ball. So that was a big piece. But I agree with you in that he didn't put all the credit over there on other people's shoulders. He has confidence in himself, like any quarterback, any player should, of saying, I've been waiting for my opportunity. I've been preparing. I was just trying to get myself in a position when I'm given that opportunity, I'm going to excel. And I think as fans, we're just clamoring for more. Now that we've seen this one game taste of what he can offer and what this offense can be just through the air, our minds start racing of, what if we were actually able to run the ball, which seems like a far cry from any statement we've made up until this point, that we would be clamoring over the pass attack as compared to what we were able to do in the run game.
Well, let's transition and talk about that and the defense here. But it's Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. I know many of you doing what you can to get together with family and friends here this time of year. Of course, social distance, 6 feet apart, things like that. But I can tell you that if you're hanging out and having a good time, Classic City Lager goes great with that experience, because it is good cold beer. And maybe you have folks from out of town who haven't been back in the state for a while. They miss getting a chance to be in Athens. You can give them a taste of Athens with that Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company, because the good news is you don't have to be in Athens to get it. It's available in 6 and 12-pack cans year-round at whichever retailer you like to shop right here in the state of Georgia. So make sure you check that out and serve it up as you enjoy some time with family and friends here this Thanksgiving. We really appreciate Classic City Lager for making the Dog Nation Happy Hour possible here each week. So, John, as we said before, there's a way in which the JT Daniels performance, the persona that he projects, almost serves as an eraser. It erases the issues that you might have noticed the running game. It erases the issues that you might have noticed now for multiple games with the defense, all of a sudden those problems seem less substantial because people are legitimately excited about the quarterback position. I don't fault them for feeling that way. So let's kind of separate both these things and look at them both. You can just take whichever one you want to first. When it comes to Georgia not really running the football really at all on Saturday, when it comes to defense giving up some passing plays to Mississippi State after having kind of given up some really big plays and losses to Florida and Alabama, how much do these things rank as a concern for you at the moment?
Well, I'm more concerned about the defense, honestly. You look at the past few performances, and Kentucky's the exception of the past three times they've taken the field. But, we showed some holes against Alabama, and you attribute it to the elite amount of talent that comes from Alabama. But when you have the performance that they had against Mississippi State, and granted, that's a very different offense that they're faced against, and they played a much different scheme than the one that they're comfortable with, which is that match man dominant scheme that they usually use on defense. They're in a mostly zone, 3-man pass rush, very far from their comfort zone, and it was evident. It just wasn't a great performance. But I think the attrition of some of these players that we've lauded for so long, Richard LeCount, Jordan Davis, them being gone, it's kind of taken its toll. And I don't think they have that same chemistry. And so now is a great opportunity to rebound. There's, I don't think there is a lack of talent, but in any good group, you have to be able to work well with one another. And for the past few outings, what we've seen is a lot of, the arms up and look at each other after the communication that comes after a play where, you're saying that was your responsibility. No, I thought it was you. That's problematic. And I think it just is an indicator that guys haven't had the time on task with one another just because of the number of moving pieces.
Yeah, I got the sense that in some respects, maybe Kirby looked at the Mississippi State game as kind of a one-off. I think the comparison gets made to, I think Smart himself even made this comparison, triple option, Georgia Tech, this kind of thing that you see maybe once a year. In the case of the Mike Leach air raid, you may not see it again for another few years, just given the way the SEC schedule kind of operates, that some of what happened in that game is just kind of a throwaway. It's kind of a one-time thing. You don't make too big of a deal about it. But in particular, some of those communication issues, second wave linebackers talking to back line, secondary, the safety linebacker type conversation, some of the stuff with some of the throws that were able to be made over the middle of the field type thing, that even if the offensive system that was producing that is far different than the Floridas and the Alabamas and what Georgia may see the rest of the way, that some of those breakdowns were at least a little bit familiar compared to some of the things that we've already seen thus far. Would you say that I'm probably describing that accurately?
Yeah, I think there are two things that stick out to me that are pertinent to this line of thought. And the first is the post-play communication, which is so, I think we've become so accustomed to Georgia's defense being so disciplined. I flashback 2 years ago where, it was the no-name defense that was performing at such a high level. There wasn't one particular guy that you pointed to and said, man, this thing circles around him. He can change the field. He's, that difference maker that every team circles. We didn't have that guy, but yet everybody was on task. Everybody was on their assignment. They picked each other up. The windows were so very small. The tackles were secure. There wasn't the big plays. That's kind of what we've come to know. And when you see the contrast of that, it highlights the play breakdowns where there's an open receiver and the windows are a little bit wider and the communication comes after the play where they're going, I thought you had him. That kind of thing that you just see on the field. That's number one. The second thing is, I think the turnover opportunities have been there, and this defense hasn't really cashed in on those. So instead of the ball changing hands, you have the quick turn. All of a sudden, the drive is sustained, and you get an extra opportunity, and they continue to march down, and that play is almost forgotten. But in the past, what we've come to know under the Kirby Smart era is give me the opportunity, and the defense will take advantage of it and make you pay for it. I don't think we've quite seen that as much. And losing Richard LeCount, I definitely think that plays a factor. He's such a playmaking safety that, he may have a couple screw ups, but he's also a guy that I think he was leading the league in at least the conference in interceptions. So you lose playmakers like that. You need other guys to be able to step up when they're given the opportunity.
And I think most of us, yourself included, had a little bit of an indication that his absence was going to be felt because Georgia substitutes all the time, but safety, for whatever reason, has been one of those spots that Kirby just has not done a ton of substituting at. I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for why that's the case. For the most part, Georgia's had really good safeties. Why would you take him off the field? So LeCount's one of those guys for the last couple of years. There's also J.R. Reed, now it's Lewis Seen. That these are these bedrock safeties that are just not coming off the field. That up until the last couple of weeks, there just hasn't been a lot of football over the course of the last really 4 years where Georgia hasn't had Richard LeCount on the field playing a ton of safety. It does just take a while to get used to that when a guy, I mean, his image, back there in that safety spot almost gets burned into your brain because for years now, he's just been a fixture there. That it's probably not that big of a surprise to any of us that, there are some major growing pains, even though I think that Chris Smith's a really good player, by the way, has the potential to be a good player for sure. Even with all that said, it's just kind of a tough thing when you have to get used to playing with a guy that has been a given in that spot now for quite some time.
Well, I think we've had two field generals for Georgia on this defense. It's Monty Rice and Richard LeCount, two guys that have been in the system. They line up very easily and can get other guys adjusted and on the same page. And I think we've seen at times some of the frustration that Monty has felt because he's trying to get guys on that same page and make the adjustments. And you have a number of changing pieces. That's kind of become a staple of this Georgia defense. But I think the inconsistency in communication is what we're all kind of scratching our heads going, this isn't a typical performance that we've come to expect from this Georgia defense. And it might be a norm for other places, but it certainly isn't for this Georgia defense. And seeing it is a stark contrast to what we've become so familiar with.
So before we move off the defense, let me ask you this. This is something that I've been kind of touting for a while. I am really glad that Georgia's got as many good and talented players as it does on defense. And obviously the recruiting success is one of the things that's enabled that. My personal wish list for Georgia football is that someone from this crop of very good and talented players would emerge as the thing above that, the kind of household name, superstar type player. I'll mix metaphors compared to basketball, where in basketball, you've got to have that guy that you want taking the last shot. That's the guy that becomes the alpha on the team. I really think that Georgia would do well to have one of those guys. And frankly, I think that Georgia would do well if that was someone in the front seven, kind of the way that Roquan Smith was back in 2017. Now, John, I know you know this, but I want everybody else to hear me say this. I'm not saying that anybody on the Georgia defense is underachieving, because truly, I don't have any reason to believe that's the case. As far as I'm capable of understanding, all of these guys that are playing a lot and out there starting are doing their job. I would say the Georgia defensive coaches are happy with the return they're getting from these players. But if this very, very talented defense, if the coaches that coach these guys up, if you could propel one of these guys to be famous enough that opposing fans all knew who it was and spend time worrying about that guy and things like that, when you do get into one of these binds where you just can't get off the field against Mississippi State, or you have some issues against Florida and Alabama, that guy could step up and be the one that just gets you out of trouble, gets you out of the bind. Obviously, everybody would want a Roquan if you can have one. They don't come around every single year. But something a little more of a superstar type guy on defense, I do think that's kind of the missing equation for Georgia right now.
Yeah, in our discussions, I think we've started with a foundation that we need to be very clear on, and the rest of this, the supporting cast, if you will, has that junkyard dog mentality of just, we're hungry, we're going to achieve, we're going to drive. I'm not sure we saw that or have seen that quite as much, and that's probably what we're trying to put our finger on. But for big playability, Azeez Ojulari was the guy that we thought, from week 1, 2019, this is the next guy, right? Or Nolan Smith when he's coming out of high school and you're going, top defensive end. I mean, this guy's going to be an outside playmaker. And candidly, I haven't really seen that in 2020. Not saying he's not helped the team, but not to the level that you expect when he first came to campus, I think everybody was kind of salivating, like, this guy is going to be that pass rusher, that disruptive force off the edge that, every team is going to have to be aware of. He hasn't quite made it there yet. Does he still have time and opportunity to become that? Yeah, of course. And I think his mentality is one that could most likely lead him there. But we don't have that guy, BA. We don't have that one guy that they're going, ooh. We've seen flashes. Adam Anderson with his speed off the edge, his ability to bend. Aziz has flashed where, he's able to take some of these tackles and push them back, work the edge. But on a consistent basis, there's not that disruptive force, which I think any team would want. I would want the other 10 guys to have more of that mentality of what we saw and discussed. I brought up a couple minutes earlier that we saw a couple years ago, where it might not be a big name, but man, do they play solid football. They seem hungry, and that's almost what you get with. I don't know if we're talking like stars, but if you get these 3- and 4-star guys that feel like they come in and they have something to prove, if that's the meat and potatoes of your team, that might be a little different than the 4- and 5-star guy that's looking for the high-end play that says, that guy's got some freaky special talent and can flash in those occasions, but that's 15% of the time. We need the rest of those guys to be the 85% that say, we're grinders and we're hungry and I have something to prove. And every time I go out there, I'm fighting for you to give me the credit that I deserve. I think that mentality in a highly talented guy is what makes people, they move from very good to great, which is what we're all looking for. I think what we're trying to do as a program is move from very good to elite.
It's Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. The other one of those kind of twin concerns going back to last week was what happened in the running game. And John, I'm a Georgia partisan. I want Georgia to win, and probably have a tendency, like everybody else, to kind of overanalyze things that don't seem perfect in any given moment. But I got to tell you, even though the Georgia rushing attack against Mississippi State was shockingly unsuccessful, inept in comparison to what we typically expect from Georgia, the honest truth is I'm really not that worried about it, in that, Kirby Smart even said this on Monday, that if you want to run the ball better, you're going to have to throw the ball better to convince defenses to play a different way. I don't know that Mississippi State expected to get the firepower that it got from Georgia through the passing game on Saturday. They had a game plan they chose to stick with, to say, we're not going to let you run the ball against us. I wonder if South Carolina, on the basis of what they see from film on Georgia from this past Saturday, is forced to do things just a bit different. Either way, if Daniels is throwing the ball consistently the way that he did this past Saturday, I truly don't think running the ball is going to be a problem. I do think in 2020 you throw to set up the run, whereas football probably used to be the opposite of that for a long time. I think the sport has maybe changed in that regard now. So if Georgia has an effective passing attack, it will have an effective running game. And if it can't get the passing game going, unfortunately, it's probably not going to have much of a running game either.
Well, if I were Mississippi State, I would have come in with the exact same game plan. Prove to me that you can pass the ball, especially with this new guy nobody knows. And it just so happens JT proved it to him. I can throw the ball. We can be an effective offense with the ball in my hands and not handing it to one of the very many capable backs that we have behind me. So I think Mississippi State came in with the correct game plan for Georgia. It just so happens we have a quarterback that was able to make them pay for it. Now, having watched that performance from our offense, we didn't execute very well in our run game. You give some credit to the approach that Mississippi State has and their mentality and what they were trying to take away from Georgia, but we didn't execute well. Our players didn't hit their assignments. I think I treaded pretty closely to identifying one individual and bashing him possibly a little bit on Monday on our show. But I mean, his performance wasn't great. He's not alone. In the run game, we weren't putting our hats where they're supposed to be. We weren't on guys. There were some missed blocks at the point of attack, and our running backs had very little opportunity. You look forward to this Saturday, and I expect, like you, a much different performance because that's become the norm. What we're used to is a hat on a hat and our running backs make the free man miss. or at least drag him for an extra 5 yards, as Zamir White has become known for. I mean, his just relentless effort of pushing the pile. He'll get hit at 4 yards, and all of a sudden it's a 9-yard gain just because his engine never stops and those legs never stop churning. But against Mississippi State, our front five wasn't as sharp as they have been. And I'm hoping that that's the anomaly, and that based on what we've seen up until this point, I think it is.
So this week, speaking of that offensive line stuff, Kirby Smart did not really hold it back, very much when he was asked to kind of address how he thought that group performed. And he went so far as to say, this is not about missing blocks. This is about, the next thing, and then completely whiffing and completely getting just, as he kind of described it, kind of manhandled, which is a pretty eye-opening thing to hear Smart say, because we've come to expect the Georgia offensive line to be one of this team's strengths. But Smart was pretty pointed in his criticism going back to Monday. It almost makes you wonder, John, could we see personnel changes for this upcoming, Saturday against South Carolina when Smart doesn't hold back like that? Many times that is a message, through the media to the players themselves. And maybe that's a way of getting the current guys motivated, or maybe that's a bit of a foreshadowing that we just may see a different five a bit coming up this Saturday against the Gamecocks. You have any opinion on that? Because I would say that's one of the things I am probably pretty curious about for this upcoming Saturday.
There's absolutely no reason to believe that would be off the table. I mean, why would we think a Georgia offensive unit that has already used multiple players in their lineup last year and this year, interior, the right tackle position, Warren Erickson's a guy that has come in on occasions. Owen Condon's a guy that had some start and playing time early in the season. There's no reason to believe that they wouldn't be afforded the opportunity to at least compete and get opportunity to be on the field on Saturday. But with that said, I would think that was more of a motivational tool. Like, this is not going to cut it, and it shouldn't. The performance that was had by the front five was not close to the standards that I think they are the ones who control where the bar is. It's not like they're incapable. I think because we've seen their capacity and their capabilities, when you underperform, we're going to call you out on it. It's not good enough. You are capable of more. And when you are getting pushed, because when they whiff and just totally blow assignments, that's what we saw. You're scratching your head going, what are you doing? Why are we not? I mean, literally, if you can count 0, 1, 2, most of the blocking assignments in run game, you try to keep it as simple as possible. If you can't block number one, we can probably find somebody to at least get in front of them. And we weren't able to do that on Saturday. So yes, credit to Mississippi State. I think their effort was, or maybe they came with more energy, but it was a combination of missed assignments and then just not having enough dog in you, not having enough want to, and execution of that assignment was nowhere close to being acceptable.
One thing we do know about Mississippi State, they also, I guess, play a lot of tricks with you there at the line of scrimmage to kind of give you some different looks. And that was certainly something that Smart said going into the game that you have to be aware of with Mississippi State. There's some stunts, there's some things like that that they like to show you along the defensive line. From an eye standpoint, watching that stuff kind of going along and knowing where you're supposed to, turn your attention as a blocker. How much of a challenge is that for an offensive lineman when they're kind of moving around a bunch on you up front like that?
It can become a really good thing because you prepared for it all week. That wasn't a surprise. This Mississippi State defensive front, like so many others, aren't going to just stand up toe-to-toe and try to whip you. Though at times they were able to do that. But that's not the expected. Sometimes you're trying to create that movement, try to create some confusion. As an offensive line, with the preparation that goes in that week, you can create huge gashes in the run game because they're moving guys. They're trying to create these line games and bring the dogs. Dogs are just linebackers coming with pressure. Pressure is usually secondary stuff, just weird football terms. But you bring those linebackers in. If you catch guys on the right angle, if you're prepared for these things, which I would think Coach Luke, having the experience that he has in the SEC, having been in the same state as Mississippi State for as long as he was, I'm sure he's aware of what Mississippi State is bringing to the table in their attack. So I struggle to believe that preparation wasn't on point in getting guys aware that a defensive team that barely has enough to justify renting an airplane to charter to come fly here. I mean, you had to know that they're going to try to bring other things to create opportunities for that defensive front. So that excuse doesn't really pan out for me. I think we should have had many more opportunities. At the end of the day, it just becomes execution. And I hate to keep beating that drum, but it just wasn't there.
In the little bit of time we have left, I want to bring up a completely different subject. I'm kind of fascinated by what's not been said this week, John. I have not seen a lot of people bringing up the fact that, in a normal year, Georgia be playing Georgia Tech. Now, maybe that's because it doesn't feel like the end of the season. Thanksgiving week is usually the final weekend of the regular season. Georgia's got what we think is at least 3 regular season games left, and the hopes of a postseason game there as well. So we're not as close to the end of the season as normal, but it was a very big deal when the Georgia Tech game was canceled. Yet here we are on the week the game would have been played, and it just does not seem to have come up as much. A couple of the Georgia players were asked about it this week, but for the most part, it's not the kind of thing that has been a big part of the conversation. How much do you miss playing Georgia Tech this week? And if you don't mind me asking you a pretty pointed question, have you even thought about the fact that it's not Georgia Tech before now?
Absolutely. It becomes tradition. Thanksgiving, and I think most folks in the state of Georgia associate with the Georgia Tech game. And if anything, it speaks to the crazy year that we've had, that becomes something that's acceptable. And you just understand there are so many other fish in the fryer right now. There's so many other opportunities that drag our attention elsewhere, that we can appreciate the fact that we're playing football and understand that this is an SEC only track that Georgia is set on, and they're not alone. I'm grateful that we're having a football this time of year, and that there's still, and SEC is the best conference in college football. So each week it may not be this barn burner atmosphere, which Georgia against a SEC or a USC team that doesn't have their head coach still at the helm, it doesn't have that same environment and surrounding circumstances that it normally would. But that's still good football. It's SEC East opponent that is always biting at the heels, like a little nappy dog, or, that keeps yapping. You got to keep that thing quiet and shoved in the corner. But it's still good football. And I think it just speaks to how crazy 2020 is, that the Georgia Tech game not being a couple days following that turkey-induced siesta that we all take on our couch is one of those things that we've just come to say, it's 2020. You throw your hands up like so many other things and just say, chalk it up to 2020.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. John, it's great to have you today as part of our Dog Nation Happy Hour report by Classic City Lager. I hope that as this show airs, for the folks watching for the first time, you're in the midst of enjoying a terrific Thanksgiving. And for all the people who see this, I hope that you're also enjoying time with family and friends. And we certainly appreciate the chance to interrupt part of that, to talk a little Georgia football here, as we always do. Nothing goes better together than holiday season and football together. So thanks for allowing us the chance to talk about all of that here with you this evening. And John, I know I'll look forward to speaking to you again on Dog Nation Daily, back here again the following week for Dog Nation Happy Hour report by Classic City Lager. And obviously, as I said before, just a great start to your holiday season. I hope that's what this weekend proves to be.
And likewise, I think this is obviously so much to be thankful for. And this is an opportunity for Georgia on Saturday to kind of start putting things together. Finally, you got a quarterback that you're confident in and feel like, hey, that's a performance that can really kickstart something for us. And we've addressed some of the issues that we saw in Mississippi State. I can't wait to see that being addressed on the football field, where the defense says, let's take Mississippi State, put them in their box, realize what it was, and forget it, flush it away, because this is who we really are. Here's an opportunity. Same thing with the run game. What we've come to know, those are the two staples, if nothing else, for this team, is great defense and a really strong run game that can kind of support and keep us afloat until we get the the passer situation secured away. Well, now it seems like we've got a good answer at quarterback and need to make sure that our meat and potatoes is still very much there. It's got to be food for me, BA. It's Thanksgiving week. That's all we're thinking about. My house smells of desserts and sweet potato souffle. So I can't wait, man.
Luckily, those are analogies that I very much understand as well. I'm certainly a big fan. Maybe the only thing I like more than football might be food. So this is a pretty good weekend all the way around. We'll let folks get back to all of their enjoyment of that. Thanks for being here today on our Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager, and we will look forward to talking to you again very soon.